Hi, welcome to this week's episode of the Today in Manufacturing podcast. With me today are Jeff Ranke and Andy Zoll. We're the editors of manufacturing.net and Industrial Equipment News. We have 15 years of experience each covering the manufacturing industry. Every week we take the 5 top stories on our websites and discuss the implications that they have on the industry moving forward. So before we begin, please make sure that you like, subscribe to, and share the podcast. Leave us a positive review if you can on Apple Podcasts or whatever platform that you use. And if you want to reach any of us after the show, during the show, before the next show,
anytime, literally
anytime. Yeah. Email us at Jeff, Andy, or Anna at ien.com with email the podcast in the subject line. That will help us separate it from all the other garbage email that we receive in a day.
Whoa, there's a shot. Garbage email. Well, a lot of garbage.
What are you like every day? Just like, ooh.
I could not reach
Look how popular I am.
I could not reach that tone if I tried. I could never get that high to say ooh.
You guys, I got another one.
They just keep coming.
A new message.
I've got so many friends.
Yeah, I sit next to Jeff. That's what I hear all day. We are live every Thursday, and I can't tell you what time because it changes from week to week. Today, some technical difficulties at the beginning, but we are here. We're really excited to get started. So before we do, just a quick word about our sponsor. So one of the long-lasting impacts of COVID-19 and the global pandemic it created has been the priority now being placed on long-term enterprise-wide planning. Join David Manti and Jeff Ranke as they discuss Oracle NetSuite's latest white paper, The Ultimate Guide to Scenario Planning, to hear about new strategies and steps that you can use to de-risk your organization. Obviously, de-risking, very important right now in an age of risk. So there should be a link to that download below if you would like to see that now. Check it out if you can. All right, guys. How's everybody doing this week? Jeff, Randy?
I am good. And I have to say, and I'm not ripping on David here, but your sort of, more casual, even-keeled entry did not like sort of shock me into action. Like sometimes David comes in hot. So it was kind of nice. We're just kind of, we're easing into it. Whereas David comes in and he's loud and he's right away. It's kind of a nice adjustment. But we do miss David. Wish he was here.
Yeah, there's definitely less like, let's check your mics for the levels before this.
Just let it rip this week.
Yeah. How you doing, Andy?
I'm good. Glad to be here as always. I know David absconded with like 70% of the office, so it was me or Nolan. But
did you win
I'm
the
glad
arm
to be
wrestling match?
Oh, no, we should have done that though. That would have been good. I'm terrible at arm wrestling. I would have lost, but that's okay.
I think Nolan would be too. So it could have been
we can do
classic.
It. Maybe off the air.
Nolan's gonna come tearing in here.
He's gonna do the Hulk Hogan thing, rip off his shirt, slap. No.
Please, let's leave that for later.
Okay.
All right, guys. Well, let's kick off, I guess, with our 5th most popular story of the week. This story is about something that took place in South Africa. The headline is Elevator Drops 650 Feet in Deadly Platinum Mine Accident. An elevator carrying workers to the surface of a platinum mine in South Africa suddenly dropped more than 600 feet earlier this week. The accident, which took place at shift's end, killed 11 workers and injured 75, according to the mine operator. Some of the injured have sustained some serious compression-type fractures. The mine's owner, Impala Platinum Holdings, said that it has suspended all operations and initiated an investigation into what went wrong, calling it a highly unusual accident and the darkest day in company history. That's a quote from the CEO. South Africa leads the world in platinum production, though the trade, like others in mining, can be quite dangerous. South Africa's mining fatalities have actually steadily decreased from 300 plus in the year 2000 to 49 last year. So, Jeff, let's talk a little bit about the safety of this trade and what's taking place here.
Yeah, I mean, obviously a very tragic situation here. And it is something when you look at where this particular industry in this geography has improved over the last couple of decades. They have made significant gains here. So to see this was really hard. From a purely safety perspective, I do think it was a little bit fluky because it sounds like, as far as what they know right now, it was a safety backup that failed.
Oof.
So actually everything was in place to catch the fact that essentially the rope that was hauling up the elevator didn't properly catch or had them going the wrong way, obviously. And it was a safety backup that failed and allowed it's like a 3-decker car, if you will, of elevators where people were in all 3 levels.
Mm-hmm.
So when this thing just started dropping, obviously the folks in the bottom were in a very bad place.
Yeah.
So it does seem very unique circumstance here, but I think when you look at this industry as a whole, you could see how some of these potential safety issues could crop up. The whole platinum mining industry, especially in South Africa here, over the last couple of years has just seen the price drop out of the product. Really from early 2021, they found other alternatives for platinum, especially in the automotive sector. They've really looked at palladium, I guess, has become much more popular in there. And as we see more EVs as well and a greater need to protect different components from heat, it's just they found other options. Platinum is very difficult to get to, and obviously it poses a lot of safety concerns as well. So you can see why alternatives would have been sought out here. So it's obviously a tragic situation, and you just hope the fact that the market itself and the business environment struggling didn't potentially lead to some things getting overlooked or cost from a cost perspective, things were cut, corners were cut that led to some of this accident. We'll know more going forward, but obviously a lot that could potentially come out of this as we go forward.
Yeah, I think you always, when you're looking at a consumer product, especially one that can be higher priced, you do always have concerns about that. People cutting corners, just trying to get as much of that out of the ground as they can, and what are their safety practices there, which is concerning. You know, you mentioned automotive. I know that platinum is also used in jewelry products like pretty regularly. The one thing I thought of here is you've seen things like lab grown diamonds kind of see a boost in their popularity in recent years. And I think that's because people have become more aware of the human cost of mining gems.
Yeah.
So, I do think we'll see more of that kind of spread into other areas. And maybe that's a good thing generally. But in the meantime, yeah, you wonder, like, do those pressures then add to the operational problems or safety risks? I don't know. Andy, what did you think of this story?
I mean, everyone understands the inherent dangers of mining operations in general, and especially these kinds of mining operations deep below the surface. But it's still, even with those things understood, it's still easy to kind of overlook, these metals that society covets or depends on, depending on your application. It's easy to overlook as the human cost that it takes to get them, as you mentioned. And this is a part of the world you maybe don't tend to hear. Their safety record has improved, and you maybe don't tend to hear about these accidents here as much as some other larger countries. Those aren't tend to be coal more than metal. But it's still just a reminder of how dangerous this work is inherently. And it's also worth noting, I think, that the miners in these mines in South Africa aren't particularly well compensated for the risks they take. There's a Wall Street Journal that kind of went deeper in depth on this circumstance. They're primarily black workers in South Africa, and they're paid as little as it says $1,200 a month. And then again, given the market, raising those rates, that would be a tough sell given the state of the platinum market at the moment. So it's a tough incident all around, and it's tough to see kind of how you want to see that safety record to continue to improve, but it's hard to see beyond that kind of how the conditions for these workers get better, at least in the short term.
Well, especially when you're looking at a depressed market, where is that money going to go? This mine has been shut down since this incident occurred. How does that impact their operating opportunities, I guess you could say, or their perspective going forward? I mean, what is the chance here of, because another thing that I found too in looking at a lot of this is the level of investment has decreased significantly. I mean, this is a commodity, a metal that has gone down in value like 100% in the last 10 years. So the bottom has really fallen out of it. So if you got to shut down over a huge safety concern where you've probably already got workers concerned about a lot of things, you're going to be able to get those folks back. And what are you going to do to try to remedy the situation? And do you have the funds to do so?
Yeah, definitely a pretty terrible story overall, and still developing. There's still a lot of very grievously injured folks that were there. So our thoughts are with them. All right. So our next most popular story this week. This story is just an absolute doozy. It's got a lot of things going, so we'll try to cut right to the chase. The story is about Tesla and a standoff that's having with Swedish workers that is escalating dramatically. So Tesla mechanics with a Swedish firm called IF Metall are engaging in a major conflict with the automaker, walking off the job after 5 years of pursuing a bargaining agreement. Union representation is considered to be the backbone of labor in Sweden, and 9 out of 10 workers are currently covered by a collective bargaining agreement. After unsuccessful negotiations for better pay, pensions, and safety requirements, the 120 mechanics walked off and have since amassed other union tradespeople in a solidarity movement. For example, dock workers have reportedly refused to unload new Teslas to be sold. Cleaners won't clean Tesla showrooms, and postal workers have been accused of halting deliveries bound for Tesla. Even their charging stations are not being repaired by union electricians. IF Metall says Tesla has been fighting back by flying workers in from other countries to cross the picket lines. Since this was first reported, things have escalated further yet. This week it was yay. This week it was revealed that Tesla has filed a lawsuit against Sweden's transport agency, basically claiming that the postal workers' refusal to deliver license plates to their factory is tantamount to discrimination. Tesla says this violates the Constitution, though the agency responded that it does not share Tesla's view that the agency itself is blocking distribution of the license plates. So sounds like Tesla's digging their heels in a bit here, but so are these union workers. Jeff, what's your take on this?
Man, it's just never like there's so much here because, of course, it's Elon Musk, who, again, refuses to have anybody be his mouthpiece. He has to take to his social media platform and just basically fuel the fire with a lot of this stuff. I mean, so here's some of the things that have happened as a result of this. First of all, there was actually a court that came out that said, hey, guys, you have to deliver the license plates. You can't do that. I mean, which is good. It's kind of like somebody saying, hey, kids, somebody's got to be the adult here.
Right.
You can't do this. But it feeds into all of the negative publicity and just the negative sentiment that this is going to create for Tesla in this marketplace, which is an important one, in my opinion. So some other stuff that's come out of this, first of all, you've had a taxi organization over there. They've said they will no longer buy Teslas for their taxis. You've also had actually this IF Metal offers Swedish Tesla workers an opportunity to strike with them, and they'll pay them 130% of their salary if they'll join them on strike. Nobody's taken them up on it, but it sort of builds this overarching feeling or whatever you want to say within this society. The other thing is there's another smaller supplier in Sweden that provides a very important door panel, I believe, or a piece of the body for Tesla Model Ys, and they're going on strike as well. Jeez. So what you've got, and Tesla may find a new supplier for this in no time at all, but at the same time, then, okay, you not only have these folks go on strike, but then are they also going to lose their jobs because they basically supported their brethren here in supporting their strike against Tesla? So you're just creating all this animosity that's really unnecessary, in my opinion, because when you look at the average wages for service technicians in Sweden, they're lower than what we pay here in the U.S. Now, I understand there's a lot of different factors and different levels of expertise that can go into all of these factors, different pricing when you're talking about taking a product overseas. I get all of that, but man, I mean, not paying these folks, and all they're asking for is, again, a commensurate salary and according to what everybody else is getting there. So you've got that, and I think one of the things that he is trying to do, and it's Elon Musk, because that's the only person you hear from when it comes to Tesla. There's nobody else that's talking for the company, nobody else that really represents it, so it all comes back on him. And I think he's digging his heels in because he's so anti-union or not pro-union anyway, whatever you want to say.
I think you can say safely anti-union.
Anti-union. And when you look at every other major automaker, take Toyota, for example, no union shops here in the U.S. They have unions that they deal with in Japan. So there is a legacy or a history or whatever you want to say of automakers having geographic indifference when it comes to unions and their approaches to them. So he can do this. It's not like he's going back. It's not like he's opening himself up to UAW demands or anything like that. by simply doing what he needs to get his product on the streets in Sweden. We ran another article, and I think you're going to talk about it later, about how this area specifically is becoming so much more open to electric vehicles. So it just seems like he's creating all this negative sentiment and all this negative energy when really all you'd have to do is sit down and talk to these folks who, by the way, gave him an extra month. They went on strike in late October and didn't actually walk off here until now. So I don't know. He just seems to really fuel the flames and make these situations much more than they need to be.
Well, and they've been negotiating for 5 years. I mean, that's a while.
Yeah.
Andy, what's your take on this as it pertains to the Tesla perspective on unionization?
Jeff alluded to this a little bit, but if you're gonna do business in another country, you got to play ball a little bit. I mean, you can't just. This is how their labor market works. They don't have a minimum wage. Their workers are covered by collective bargaining agreements. And I found that, I didn't know that actually, that I found that particularly interesting.
Yeah.
And it feels like something that maybe should cut across. I mean, the union itself is like, this is the arrangement that keeps the government out of the labor market, which is an interesting angle that I think would cut across the political spectrum a little bit. That notwithstanding, to just jump into a market and say we're not going to deal with our laborers in the same way that every other company in that market deals with their labor, I mean, it's just hubris, right?
Yeah.
It's just complete hubris. And just from a pure entertainment perspective, it's nice from my angle to see a company and an executive like this get at least a little bit of pushback. I know this is messy, just purely sick entertainment perspective.
It just really enjoying it. Yeah.
And the other thing is more to your original question. If it wasn't already abundantly clear, the UAW has long kind of forecasted, and they officially announced that they're going to try and unionize non-union assembly plants here in the U.S., including Tesla. It feels like a dozen other automakers, but Tesla for sure. And if that wasn't already abundantly clear, this should show that that would be a very messy effort indeed if it gets off the ground. So,
Yeah.
It's
It's another head shaker, isn't it? Because what they need to gain here, what they could gain in Sweden by simply, again, these guys they're not asking for 20% increases like the UAW just went on strike for.
It's bad business.
They're saying pay us like anybody else here would in a similar role. And Tesla just digs their feet in. And again, it's not Tesla, right? You assume you automatically go, it's Elon Musk, because he doesn't want to have anybody help him word what he has to say, help him be a little more articulate in presenting his perspective. He's got to take to social media and do it. So it's just hard to understand how somebody who is a legitimate genius and has innovated in so many ways and done so many incredible things just gets hung up on some of these things. And I think one of you said it. It's hubris. It's arrogance and it's hubris.
Cutting off your nose to spite your face.
Yeah.
I think though there has to be something there where they do think that if they acquiesce that they're gonna lose ground elsewhere, because it doesn't make sense. I mean, yes, maybe it's hubris, partly, but it doesn't make sense to file a lawsuit and endure a shutdown and all this stuff going on with your deliveries, your brand reputation there, as you mentioned. They are losing money like crazy, way more than if they would just pony up whatever small concession that they need to make to keep operating. And they're not doing that. Why? Because I do think that they see this as, we have to hold our ground here, because otherwise, where does it end? I don't know if that's true, because I agree with you. Like, obviously, we've done work with the Exim Bank a lot in the past, where they help companies understand how to better export, import products. And one of the things that they always say is make sure that you understand the market that you're selling into. And that's not just regulatory, but also culturally. And I think this is where they got tripped up, is because they don't, I mean, to your point, like if this is how Sweden operates, you have to just function there. You can't just go in and shoehorn your own strategy into like whatever you're trying to do and expect that it's going to be successful, because clearly it's not.
You got to pay off lobbyists for years to do that.
Well, here you do, but but yes, I do think that there's got to be some underlying fear that's because they are so known for like, we play hardball, they have to play hardball forever. And if they don't, then people are going to start pushing back. Maybe, I don't know.
I think it's dangerous when you see the amount of competition that's coming down the line for EVs, though.
I totally agree, and it's ridiculous for them to in Scandinavia, as you said, where EVs are like immensely globally like top popularity. Like I read this week that Norway's population vehicle buyers 90% EV.
Yeah.
That's outrageous.
That's insane.
Compared to here where it's 9%. That is where you want to be. And so for them to be playing around with that and being ridiculous, it's not a good look. Yeah. Anyway, I think we all agree on that. All right, our next story. Handheld radio battery fire causes millions in damage. Last year, a fire broke out on the bridge of the S Trust, an oil tanker that was docked in Baton Rouge. The NTSB said the fire was caused by thermal runaway of a cell in an ultra-high frequency handheld radio's lithium-ion battery. The batteries and chargers for the radios were placed on a communications table on the bridge, and when the fire broke out, the vessel's crew was able to extinguish it before it spread. Unfortunately, the S-Trust navigation, communication, and alarm systems were ruined, with damages totaling around $3 million. Lithium-ion battery cell explosions are often caused by thermal runaway, a chemical reaction that can cause the cell to ignite and explode. A lithium-ion battery cell can spontaneously experience a thermal runaway if damaged, shorted, overheated, defective, or overcharged, according to the NTSB, who urges disposal of damaged batteries and supervision of charging, as well as keeping batteries away from heat sources. In a case of this could have been so much worse, the Liberian ship was in the process of offloading some 464,000 barrels of high sulfur fuel oil. So obviously, had that fire not been attended to immediately, this could have been a disaster of epic proportions. Probably fortunate that it was just these, components that had been damaged despite that high price tag. So, Andy, let's talk a little bit more about these batteries.
They're everywhere.
Yeah.
And it's because they're everywhere. And this is another thing. I think everyone is aware of the dangers or the possibility that they could overheat and start a fire. I think everyone knows that. They know not to put it in your baggage when you get on a plane, that sort of thing. But they're also everywhere, so it's easy to forget or overlook it or dismiss it. So it's a reminder, and one that didn't come with catastrophic human or environmental cost, that these batteries are potentially very dangerous. And it's, I think, a good example here, because if something as seemingly innocuous as a radio could start this kind of fire with potentially even much worse complications, then it's easy to think, oh, hey, maybe I should unplug my phone or my toothbrush or, any of the million things in your home that has a lithium-ion battery. Could maybe unplug that before you go to work.
Yeah. not a bad, just order of business.
Yeah.
When I saw this, it was one of those stories where I was like, I really hope that people read beyond the headline here to see the exact circumstances of this, because you do get, I think there is a lot of there's a lot of indifference, but then at the same time, people are fearful of the batteries, especially with electric cars and all that stuff. I think it's important to read what the NTSB points out here, which are like the best practices around their use. Because I read a story a week or two ago about how many people have died in New York City because of exploding e-bike batteries from fires. Wow. Like dozens of people, I think 30-something people in this year, 2023, died in fires related to e-bike batteries exploding. And what they said was a lot of what's happening here is people are buying cheap e-bikes, and they have batteries that are built overseas, who knows where, and the quality is really low, and oftentimes the batteries are degraded. And that's when you run such a high risk of this thermal runaway and these fires. So I think it's a really important emphasis on like country of origin. Maybe it is another reason to try to maybe like bring back some of those supply chains and redirect, some of that production, so you really know what you're getting. But just a reminder to like be very mindful when you make that kind of purchase and try to figure out where it's coming from, because the low price, there's some risk to that low price. Jeff, what did you think of this story?
No, those are a lot of great points that both of you have made. I think to me, when I first saw this, first of all, it's crazy. Were they even charging these batteries, or were they basically just out? I mean, that's what's so scary about these batteries, is it really doesn't even take anything for this thermal runaway to take effect.
Yeah, the story lists, the conditions, and
basically sitting on a table and started on fire.
Yeah.
Crazy. And I think what this does is it sort of reinforces, I think, a little bit some of the reservations that some people still have about electric vehicles when you think about those lithium-ion batteries. I mean, we ran a couple of stories this week talking about EV sales trends, like you mentioned, Anna, and some other things that Edmunds is reporting, or Consumer Reports, is reporting about how people feel about buying EVs. And one of the things they talk about battery, it's more on the reliability perspective than the safety perspective. We've done stories too about electric vehicle batteries just not being able to handle the heat and starting on fire as well.
Mm-hmm.
So it's an ongoing concern. I think it also reinforces the need and the positive momentum that's being gained behind some of these other energy sources. When we look at, we've talked a ton about hydrogen. I think the two battery technologies that we're going to be hearing more about are sodium ion and zinc ion. Did I say that correctly? Or zinc-based batteries. I don't know if it's zinc ion, but essentially sodium and zinc, they are much safer than the lithium, less flammable. We just haven't figured out how to store the energy in them at the same level that lithium is. It's just not as dense. So it'll be interesting, though, as we see more of these types of situations with the lithium ion. I think it pushes us forward to look at other technologies too. That the solution is the end point. The end solution is probably still out there someplace.
Mm-hmm. I completely agree. I think it's still a work in progress, but the good news is that the automotive industry is investing a ton of money and brain power in finding the right battery for moving forward, and consumer applications will benefit from that R&D that they're doing. So
it's worth noting that lithium isn't exactly readily available either. That's hard to come by. So not only will you get this added safety from some of these advanced or solid state batteries, maybe get a little cheaper, a little better for the environment too.
Yes, definitely another reason to look elsewhere for what we can do there. All right, moving on to our second most popular story this week about U.S. Steel, who is said to be permanently idling steelmaking at its Illinois facility. Back in September, U.S. Steel announced that it would be temporarily idling a blast furnace in Granite City, Illinois, saying it was, quote, risk mitigation, as a UAW strike softened demand for steel from automotive customers. Now that strike has been resolved, as we know, but things for U.S. Steel's Granite City facility have not. Recently, it was revealed that the company has issued a warn notice citing plans to shutter steelmaking at Granite City indefinitely. U.S. Steel reports plans to add 600 workers to the 265 who were temporarily laid off, resulting in nearly 900 jobs lost. That's out of 1,450, by the way. Because of prior comments the company has made about potentially selling their blast furnaces, plus the competitive and financial problems that they've faced that have led to a bidding war to buy them, some were skeptical of the blame being placed on the UAW. U.S. Steel says that demand from the idled operation will be taken on at other facilities and that rolling and finishing would still take place at Granite City using slabs sourced from other sites. Jeff, we have talked about U.S. Steel a bit this year. They've had a very tumultuous time in the last few years, and then obviously we've seen them back in the news as their competitors look to buy them. What do you think is happening here?
I think there's a lot. It's funny whenever we talk about U.S. Steel, it is a really interesting case study in just the collapse of. I mean, just take a minute to think about what this company was. This is why Pittsburgh has a football team called the Steelers.
Yeah.
Because of U.S. Steel. This was the first billion-dollar company in the history of the world. I mean, just think about it. At one point, this company employed over 300,000 people.
Wow.
I mean, it's crazy when you think about the scale that it had. I always think about the Godfather movie when Michael's talking to Hyman Roth and he says, Michael will be bigger than U.S. Steel. Well, what does that mean now?
Yeah.
Because now this is the fifth largest steel manufacturer in the U.S. Forget the world. And I think a lot of that, when you look at the tone, I know Andy's going to talk more about this, but when they try to blame this on the UAW, I think this almost reverts back to sort of a just antiquated approach to dealing with a lot of things, okay? They're trying to get rid of these blast furnace locations, facilities. That's because blast furnaces are one of the most inefficient and environmentally unfriendly ways to produce steel. Okay, when you look at Nucor, which is the leading U.S.-based manufacturer of steel, they've never had blast furnaces. They've always had what they call electric arc furnaces. Now, they're not coal-fed blast furnaces. They're still depending on electricity, and we know where a lot of electricity comes from, so we're not going to position this as just like the cleanest approach. But again, this is something Nucor's been doing for 50 years. Mm-hmm. And this is something that U.S. Steel, even with this new facility they're building in Arkansas, this $5 billion facility there, it's still using some of these older technologies. And I think this just is in a microcosm of where this company has come from, because they just haven't updated their perspective and become more aware of what's going on. They were this $1 billion company, just a monster coming out of World War II. Well, all of a sudden, all those companies in China and Germany understood and realized there's more efficient ways to do this. And that's where they ate U.S. Steel's lunch. It wasn't just because it was a lower priced product. It's because they could do it more efficiently and then sell it at a lower price, still make a good number. So it's, again, to hear them come out talking about the UAW as a reason for doing this, no. These are internally bad decisions that were made, and that's why U.S. Steel is where they are.
Andy, do you agree? UAW as a scapegoat?
I would suggest that maybe they're not on the top of the list of U.S. Steel's issues. No, they're Jeff talked about this. We don't have to rehash them, but their problems go back decades. Yeah. I mean, since, I saw one analyst say they haven't done anything. They peaked in 1916. They haven't done anything new since the 50s, and it's been downhill since the 70s.
Peaked in 1916. That is a harsh.
That's one person's perspective. Who's to say? But I mean,
it's hard to argue with.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Really.
And it's hard to, when you're that enormous of a company, it's hard to be nimble enough to reposition yourself in the face of new competition. That's just how it's gone. And the fact that as I'm sure you guys have talked about here, there's the subject of multiple bids suggests that their bigger rivals think they can get them for a pretty good price at this point. Mm-hmm. So there's that element. Yes, probably they're being the UAW was being a convenient scapegoat for their decision.
It was an easy target, especially with what was in the news cycle at that time. Yeah, they kind of glommed on to
never let a good crisis go to waste and that sort of thing. We've talked in these stories about layoffs before about how some of the silver lining is that there's a huge demand for manufacturing workers, skilled workers, and that is the same here. That demand is still there, so you'd hope that these hundreds of workers would be able to find work in the St. Louis area in some other capacity. But Granite City, that's a steel town. And it's not, those officials there will say, we're not as much of one. We're not as dependent as we used to be. There's other businesses, other economies operating there, but they'll willfully acknowledge it's still going to make a dent. So it's, with this story, a little more concerned about the municipality itself than the workers at large, but we'll have to see how that shakes out.
So you're saying it's not a granite town?
I didn't look into why it was called that.
It probably
city.
Was.
Yeah. It's a steel town, yes. But a granite city. Yeah, I agree with you. I think that the UAW was put in an unfair position here. You can see how frustrated the observers were when U.S. Steel pinned this on the strike, because they were very quick to shutter this plant. Didn't take long at all. And so some people were saying, like, this was a premeditated, horrible way of laying off these workers without having to provide notice. Yeah. I think if you look at this against a backdrop of some of their previous business decisions, it is a bit suspicious. So last year, U.S. Steel announced plans to sell 2 of these blast furnaces to SunCoke Energy, saying that SunCoke would alter the furnaces to produce pig iron. U.S. Steel would still supply the raw materials for that, and then they would buy back 100% of the product, and they would continue to process there. But SunCoke only needed about 1/3 of the plant's workforce. And as far as I know, this is still not a done deal. Now, based on this indefinite shutdown, maybe it's in trouble, maybe it's dead. There was talk for a while about the union being opposed to the sale, and they have some, this is crazy, they have some clause in their contract. It's called a succession clause, where if U.S. Steel tries to sell, they apparently have a seat at the bargaining table. They could potentially tank the deal, and they were against the deal. So that was like all a part of the very knotted mess over selling these blast furnaces. So yeah, it stands to reason that they are like, you know what, let's unload some workers and idle. And I don't know what happens next, but it seemed like maybe these workers had a target on their backs. On the other hand, trying to look at it from the other side, like maybe it also speaks to just how much this company is hanging by a thread.
Absolutely.
Because, you know, we know that the strike's impacts on automakers was in the billions. GM said 1.1 billion it cost them. Ford said 1.7 billion in profits it cost them. You know, if you're a material supplier in the Midwest, these plants are your core customers. You have very limited cash flow. You can't maybe afford to sit on this product at all. So maybe you can buy that risk mitigation a little. I feel like they were a little bit too quick on that,
Yeah.
but you can see why they said that in a way, you know? So I don't know. It was convenient, but at the same time, you kind of feel like maybe this whole thing was inevitable. As you guys said, they were on a really downward trajectory here. So, not like massively surprising, but yeah, this whole issue has made a lot of people really angry in that region.
Maybe they listened to me on the podcast and they thought that this strike was going to go on for much longer than what it was, so they thought they could milk that a little bit.
Yeah,
But they were wrong too.
They were like, Jeff said it, so
Yeah.
we should probably shut down,
Whoops!
hunker down, and wait this out.
It's my fault. U.S. Steel is plummeting.
Well, Jeff, that's
My bad.
You have a lot of power.
Sorry, guys.
Mhm.
I'm an influencer, Anna.
Well, I then I cannot wait to hear what you have to say about our number one story of the week.
There's a lot of people thinking this. No.
Get ready, everybody. Jeff's here. Ready to talk about job cuts loom as VW chief warns it is, quote, no longer competitive. You can see why this was the top story of the week. That's kind of a very interesting headline.
Kind of a punch in the face.
Yeah. So VW brand chief Thomas Schaefer told staff the company's high costs and low productivity have led to a point where it is, quote, no longer competitive. As it previously reported in June, the company is eyeing productivity improvements as well as 10 billion euros in cuts, which they say will come in part from staff reductions. That's about 11 billion US. VW now says that it hopes to take advantage of demographic shifts and rely on early or partial retirements for some of these cuts. They're vowing not to force layoffs until 2029. While VW's EVs are selling effectively, the problem is one of profitability. VW has stated plans to target synergies across brands and in hopes of doubling the company's profits to 6.5%. Personnel cuts will play a big part, but Reuters says that the lion's share will actually come from initiatives outside of the staff reductions. For instance, Human Resources Board member Gunnar Killian said this week that the automaker needs to, quote, finally be brave and honest enough to throw things overboard that are being duplicated. He also mentioned in those statements about not allowing things to be a ballast and not holding on to, you know, legacy thoughts and objectives that aren't doing the company any good. Maybe they're redundant. So it looks like VW's having a bit of a reckoning. What do you think, Andy, about this story?
Well, I think the key phrase there is something you put in on an internal memo and not a press release. So just a nice reminder that when you're, you know, putting out an internal document, to make sure that that could always be leaked to the press.
That's a very good point.
That notwithstanding, I wouldn't say this is a surprise by any stretch. Everyone has kind of understood, both management and labor have understood for years, that as the auto industry writ large transitions to EVs, you need less manpower to make those cars. So they've been trying to hash this out for years, long before that transition was actually underway. And now it's kind of come to this day of reckoning, as you said. What I thought was most interesting was that it thinks it can just trim the fat for most of these cuts instead of, relying on massive layoffs, which would be, of course, an issue with their union labor force. So I'm curious whether we'll actually see what some of those duplicated functions are, whether we'll get to learn what they were not honest and brave enough to cut earlier. We'll just have to kind of wait and see if we get to learn that.
Yeah, it is hard to imagine $10 billion worth of just bloat, but who knows?
They hadn't been worried about until right now.
Until just now.
Yeah.
And you saw.
Hey guys, you know what I found?
Yeah.
I was looking at the books. Got a lot of $10 billion here. That's just, gotta get rid of that.
Yeah.
Too
Do
much.
you guys know that we have a gym membership? I never even go there. We should just.
Who's got the duplicate Netflix memberships? We only need one, guys. Come on.
A cynical person might say that is trying to cover up for the no longer competitive and job losses looming headlines that are out there on this story. Just a cynic, though, not me.
Yeah. Well, we don't have
Andy,
any cynics
we know
on
that
this podcast.
You are the ray of sunshine.
That's right.
Not only on this podcast, but the entire office. I
brought a positive story for you in case you missed it. So,
Oh, good.
Ooh,
Well,
joke's on you guys.
I'll believe it when I see it. Jeff, what do you think about this situation and as it pertains to VW's history as a company?
Well, when I saw that last quote there about throwing things overboard that are being duplicated, did anybody else think about all of those double emissions tests that they were running? The good ones and the bad ones? Which one are they throwing out now?
They didn't need to do all of those.
They didn't need to do all
Yeah.
of those. They could have just done it right.
But
the
I
first
should
time.
have.
Yeah.
Interesting. $10 billion. Interesting. That's about what they calculate all of those Dieselgate settlements at as well. So it feels like they maybe could have used that money too for something else. Maybe developing better EVs, because right now they're kind of getting their butt kicked, just even in the European market. Right now, Tesla is number one in the European market, followed by BMW, and Mercedes is right on Volkswagen's tail. So when you look at Tesla, that's a moderately priced vehicle. But you look at Mercedes and BMW, those are typically higher priced than a Volkswagen, and Volkswagen is still not able to compete in terms of the number of sales. And you look at Volkswagen's sales worldwide, really over the last 5 years, it paints a pretty gloomy picture. I mean, it supports a lot of the things that he's talking about here and what they need to do to get better. I mean, they maxed out at about 11 million in 2019. They're down to almost 8, or a little bit more than 8 in 2022, and it's trending to lose again in 2023. So their market share is going down. Their costs are gone up. That's a bad mix, obviously. So when he's talking about, I think it's going to be more than duplication. I think they need to innovate. I think they need to push the envelope with some of their electric offerings. Right now, they've got the ID4 line, which, let's be honest, I understand it's a Volkswagen. It's probably made extremely well. Not super sexy. I mean, it doesn't really stand out in the crowd from other vehicles that are out there right now. And I think that's where Volkswagen needs to transition a little bit. They've always had such a great reputation in terms of German engineering and how it's made and very reliable and all of that. Well, after that scandal, I think people are calling some of that into question. It's showing with the sales figures. So it's great to get your economic house in order. All for that makes a ton of sense. But then you also need to do some work internally, not just in shoring up the finances, but in doing something from an engineering and product perspective. I think they really need to focus there because the competition is only going to get stronger.
Do you think that, with, considering that consumers often have a short memory, do you think there's still brand damage playing out from Dieselgate?
I mean, that's fair. I mean, we're so close to it. Maybe it's just always so fresh in my mind because we constantly covered it so much during that time. And I was just sort of fascinated by the depth of the cover up and everything that was involved there. That's fair. But it's just when you look at these sales numbers, either it's a competition thing where they're not keeping up or people are still pissed about that.
Yeah. You might not think about it in your day-to-day life, but how often are you shopping for a car? You might think about it then.
Yeah.
True. But, Volkswagen was the first company to get caught, but then everybody got caught. Remember? So many other brands were implicated in this. I know that it was a black mark on Volkswagen, but I don't know. I mean, I don't know if I agree that that's driving the challenge. I do think there's a lot more competition out there. And I also think, yes, you're right, that VW's electric models so far are not that exciting. I don't think the IDs are selling that well in the US. They are doing okay in Europe, but here, they're shaped like a loaf of bread. They need a.
Yeah.
I'm interested to see whether they're working on an electric van. That I think there is no electric van on the U.S. market right now. They said they're going to have it out next year. That might make a splash enough here. We'll see what happens. But I tend to agree with you on what you said about and you, Andy, about like what, I think the headline, the way it reads, it sounds really dramatic, but at the same time, isn't it what every automaker is also already saying, which is like, we need to tighten our belts, and they're just using words like streamline and consolidate business units and all that really generic jargonistic stuff. But we are not competitive as we operate now. We need to make some changes, is what Ford is doing. GM is doing, like they're all doing it, right?
I think very true, but they did put a dollar amount on it too, which is unique. Whereas of the other automakers, especially Ford, they would say, we're looking in the neighborhood of this amount or something like that. But they came out and said it's $10 billion and they need to double their revenue or their profitability to, is it 6.5% or something like that?
6.5% is their number. They have a campaign that they're calling like Road to 6.5. It's very specific to get to that number. So we'll see how they do. But I do think, I don't know. To me, it wasn't so much about a company admitting defeat as it was being honest about how the automotive industry is sort of a snake shedding its skin right now and trying to figure out how to move forward in the age of EVs, gigacasting, increased labor costs, all that stuff that's fundamentally changing the way that they operate. Operating like the legacy brand that you have always been, I don't think is going to cut it. I think that these companies are needing to really take a hard look at being, what did he say, truthful and honest about what we
brave enough
to throw some things overboard. Yes, be brave, automakers. You all have to do that, even if it's tough, and maybe you will shed some tears. But it's about like being competitive in the automotive market's business model as it needs to be today. And not 5 years ago, not 10 years ago, none of that. So,
and I think you could do like after school specials for automakers. That was really touching.
Was it?
About being brave, I think.
I need you to be brave.
Yes. One to grow on.
Thomas Schaefer, CEO of Volkswagen. And on that note.
Segue from that one.
Let's talk one more time quickly about this Oracle NetSuite video. One of the long-lasting impacts of COVID-19 and the global pandemic it created has been the priority being placed on long-term enterprise-wide planning. We would love it if you could check out a video analysis that David and Jeff did. They're talking about Oracle NetSuite's latest white paper called The Ultimate Guide to Scenario Planning, Strategies and Steps to De-Risk Your Organization. Everybody needs to de-risk. Volkswagen's trying to de-risk. Tesla needs to de-risk. Maybe you could learn something from that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Listen to me again.
Maybe. Yeah.
Grain of salt.
In case you missed it. This is the part of the podcast where we cover stories that were not as popular on our website, but we believe should have been. We want to give them another look. So I'm going to start with Andy because he said he had a positive story this week, and I would like to see some evidence of that.
As
make
promised,
us feel good, Andy.
As promised. Apologies for my coughing fit, by the way. We'll fix that in post, maybe. I don't know. We'll see.
Nah.
It's a one-man show back there. By the way, how great of a job is Alex doing?
All
by himself.
Killing it.
Man in the fort.
I know. A lot of people left us behind this week.
It's been a quiet couple of days. All right. The aforementioned promised positive story. The headline is Google Geothermal Electricity Project could be a milestone for clean energy. So a couple years ago, Google started working with a company called Fervo Energy. And their initiative was to develop a geothermal energy project. And in just a couple of years, this week, they announced they're already generating electricity from that project in northern Nevada. So it's part of Google's efforts to what they say will power all of its operations with zero carbon energy by the end of the decade. This project, for now, will partially power its nearby data centers in Nevada, with help from solar and storage and some other projects. But the reason this is more exciting than that already appears is, first of all, this is a project that's very innovative in the geothermal space, which has, of course, been around for years and years and years. It digs much further under the Earth's surface, and succeeding with that kind of technology has the potential to unlock even more geothermal potential in the U.S. and across the globe, particularly the U.S. And two, that a major corporation is helping serve as a catalyst for that kind of groundbreaking zero emission energy. So this project, while it's modest at the moment, has a ton of potential. This is heat from the center of the Earth, or at least way under the Earth's surface. It's not intermittent like the sun or the wind. It's not potentially as disruptive as hydropower can be. So I thought this was a very uplifting story for the future of the global energy market. Your mileage may vary.
Yeah, no, I thought it was a cool story. I know sometimes people look at stuff like this and say, oh, they're just trying to generate goodwill for their brand, and they call that greenwashing. But I'm okay with this kind of greenwashing because it produces tangible results. I don't care if Google's getting some positive vibes from the world for that. Keep doing that. Like that's the kind of positive PR that I can get behind. So I think it's very cool. I agree. Jeff, what do you think?
I feel great now.
There you go.
I feel so good.
This guy.
Thanks, Andy.
Ray of sunshine over here.
Awesome. I'm not even going to think about all the fossil fuels that are slowly killing us, and the plastic in the ocean. And all.
We'll get back to that. I'll get back to that next time.
No, I think this was really cool because, first of all, we're talking about they're not just providing enough energy for their facilities, but also giving some stuff back to the grid. So, I mean, that's pretty impressive right there. The other thing is we don't talk a ton about geothermal anymore because, let's be real, it's pretty straightforward in terms of what it is, and there's not a lot of developments going on there, although we can always make it more efficient. So to be talking about another renewable energy source in a different light that's generating this much power and offering a viable solution, I think it is a great story. And Google definitely lends a lot of credibility to this type of stuff as well in terms of maybe setting up a cookie cutter type of approach for others in similar situations that need a lot of this server power. I mean, we talk a lot about this stuff. If you're a Bitcoin enthusiast, that's one of the big things they always talk about is needing enough computing power. As we get into this more artificial intelligence and machine learning and things like that, also takes a ton of computing power, which takes a lot of energy. So the more of these types of independent energy resources we can identify and champion, I do think that's very positive.
Good.
Yes, we did it.
You did it.
You have proven yourselves to us. Jeff, what was your what was your in case you missed it, Jeff?
I think I also have a very positive story. It is about an autonomous excavator constructing a 6-meter high dry stone wall. So the folks at ETH Zurich deployed an autonomous excavator called HEAP, and it built this wall. Okay, the wall is embedded in a digitally planned and autonomously excavated landscape and park. So I know this has a lot of sort of, I don't know, eye-catching dynamics involved in the headline. You're looking at an autonomous construction vehicle. It was able to do this, uses sensors. The excavator can autonomously draw a 3D map of the construction site and localize existing building blocks and stones, and it did that for the wall's construction. It has specifically designed tools and machine vision that enables the excavator to scan and grab large stones. So a couple of things that jumped out at me. Number one, taking potentially humans out of dangerous environments. If we're looking at, when I think about building these types of walls, I'm thinking about, flooding situations or other, catastrophes where we don't have to send people in, or we can have people doing other things other than building walls to save people from, I don't know, overflowing, floods from hurricanes, or, we've seen some stuff out in the islands with earthquakes, volcanoes, all these types of natural disasters. There's the term I was trying to spit out. So it offers an opportunity there. It's also the thing that could lead to other things in terms of really streamlining a lot of our construction needs. We look at all of these costs associated with infrastructure right now that we need. We need better roads. We need better buildings. We need better utilities, all of those things. If we can have machines that are able to do these things and do them in an efficient manner, which again, I mean, it's using all of this software to basically map out its game plan and then execute it, and it can run 24/7. Yeah, I think this is pretty cool. So while this was a very simple construction project, I think it does lay the groundwork for other things going forward. I thought it was kind of cool to watch as well, and it did a good job. I mean, the wall was pretty impressive. Granted, all the materials were right there for it to grab onto and utilize, but I think it's a really interesting first step.
I totally agree. And, you're right with your thing leading to the thing that, it looks basic building a wall, but for an autonomous device, it really is not. And to see what capabilities could be derived from this technology as it moves forward, especially if you could apply some sort of AI to it or machine learning, and it could become more intelligent as it goes and figure out some other ways to build and more safely without having to include a human in an application that maybe is not safe or they don't want to do that job. There's a lot of possibilities there. Andy, what did you think of this?
The video itself is awesome. It's great.
Yeah.
I was fortunate enough to go on a vacation to Scotland recently, and I got a very Scottish medieval fortress vibe out of the wall that this robot backhoe built. So it was very cool to see. And I feel like I'm one step closer to finally getting a fence around my backyard, which we've been talking about for years. So getting closer.
You're just waiting for
taking some of the legwork out. Yeah.
You're just waiting for it to be built autonomously.
Yeah. By not me. Yes.
Anyone's ever dug post holes for a fence?
Yeah.
Could appreciate somebody doing it for
There
me.
you go.
Hey, you know what? David had a fence company that he might want to recommend. I don't know if you saw that episode of the podcast.
I'm sure I did. It's not ringing a bell. I'll ask him about it when he's back.
Just be careful of the Gatorade bottles.
Yeah, you just ask him what he found.
When he and the rest of the office come back, I'll ask him about
it. All right. So in case you missed it, this week is, as we alluded to earlier, as we were talking about Tesla, but the article is called U.S. Electric Vehicle Sales to Hit Record This Year. Electric vehicle sales are expected to hit a record 9% of all passenger vehicles in the U.S. this year, according to Atlas Public Policy. This is up from 7.3% in 2022, and it will be the first time more than 1 million EVs are sold in the U.S. in one calendar year. So the prediction is somewhere between 1.3 and 1.4. So big upgrades here. These are big numbers compared to what we saw even just 5 years back.
Yeah.
The nation, they point out, is still lagging behind countries like China, Germany, and Norway, where in China, 33% of auto sales are EVs, 35% in Germany, and in Norway, as I said earlier, 90%
That's insane.
for the first 6 months of 2023. And this includes both, full battery electric vehicles and also plug-in hybrids. The article says that in those countries, ambitious government zero emissions targets, vehicle tax incentives, and subsidies and affordable options play a role in consumers' decision to adopt a vehicle that's electric. Several factors, they say, have helped boost U.S. EV adoption. But in a word, prices have gone down this year. And so they're putting a lot of emphasis on that. I know there are other factors out there, and we've discussed them at length, but we do know that price is now considered to be the biggest barrier for people in terms of why they would not purchase an EV. And that's behind things now like range anxiety that used to be at the top. So it will be interesting to see how this plays out in the next few years as prices continue to drop. Tesla is actually being viewed as a big contributor to this slow decline because some of their competitors have had to match some of those Tesla price cuts. And I also think you're seeing lower prices as just, more vehicles hit the market. GM just came out today saying that EVs are going to be profitable for them soon. So that will contribute to prices coming down once again as well. So I don't see the U.S. Getting to Norway levels anytime soon, but if anything, I think Norway's acceptance of this technology kind of speaks to its viability and its ability to function in a varied climate, because I know some people too are concerned about cold weather operations of those vehicles. So I thought it was an interesting story. I was happy to see that boost. There's a steep hill to climb now as automakers have acknowledged that they've sort of picked off the low-hanging fruit, and they have to woo buyers that maybe weren't already pro-EV. Yeah. And you're seeing them kind of address that with some new and cool functionality, some more sporty designs. They're really looking at their portfolios, getting rid of the dead weight. So it should be an interesting, I think, couple years coming up for auto and electrics especially. Andy, did you get a chance to read this article?
I did. I don't know if you guys saw, there was a study earlier this year, and it was specifically related to electric vehicles, but it was basically, the argument was that once a consumer product gets above 5% of market adoption, or whatever the phrase they used was, then it's pretty much a straight shot to kind of broad market acceptance. And
wow.
they used, and so I think the headline was that 23 countries were now at that 5% EV market share threshold. And the example that I remember from it, I'm sure they had others, but the example I remember was microwaves, and they were just, expensive and bulky, and no one had one until all of a sudden 5%, and then everybody had one.
Yeah.
So we might get to that Norway level sooner than you think, according to that study. We'll have to see, but might get there quicker than we think.
Oh, that's interesting. Thank you for that fact. I didn't know that about the 5% tipping point. I'm glad I have a microwave. I don't know. I'm trying to imagine being like, no, that seems too easy.
Got to use the oven.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jeff, what'd you think of the story?
Yeah, really interesting. I mean, when we started this podcast, that's not that long ago, we were talking about a 1% of the U.S. driving population having an EV. So the fact that we're up to 9, pretty impressive in terms of how the growth that's been taking place. I think the thing that's really going to continue to drive this is when you look at, we already got the F-150 out there, an EV version of that. Silverado's coming out. Those are the 2 big ones. I think once we get the pickup trucks figured out, which they're not there yet, there's a lot of positive momentum, but they haven't figured it out completely in terms of range and people being comfortable with that, handling colder weather and stuff like that with the type of power that they need in a pickup. But once that takes foot, I think that's really going to spur it to the next level. I think we're going to continue to see these sort of uphill upticks, in terms of total adoption. But once they get the pickups figured out, that's when we start challenging Norway.
There you go.
Then it's on Norway.
First Iceland, they're ahead of us too.
Yeah. Okay.
I was looking at Alex. I thought that'd be like a Mighty Ducks reference for him or something. He's just working too hard.
He's not doing anything. He's not doing anything special.
He doesn't have time for this frivolity.
He's pressing all of his.
He's working.
Pressing all of those buttons on the board, whatever those do. All right. All right,
he
guys.
Just did a star wipeout of your face.
Right. So before we wrap up today, I wanted to mention, and I apologize for this, but with David being out this week, he's kind of the gatekeeper of this messiest desk competition, so I have no idea what's going on there. So we're gonna roll it down. I'm gonna kick that can down the road to next week. You still have an extra week to do your homework. Send in your dirtiest workplace photos or your neatest workplace photos. They're both eligible. And you will have a chance to win from our friends at Sellers, a Sellers tumbler and a white rags box and a shop towels box. And I just want to say that I have a phone call next week with Tom Sellers, who's the CEO of Sellers. And I read his bio in advance to that. And he has got such a cool company. They are like very sustainably focused. It's just they have a cool story to tell. And I hope to share more of that down the road. But anyway, they have been generous enough to share some of their products with us for whoever has the dirtiest or cleanest workspace. Wow, we can't wait to see your pictures. So send them to us. Anna, Jeff, David, Andy at in.com. Email the podcast in the subject line. All right. Before we go, let's move on to our final thoughts. Andy, what do you got for us today?
Sort of a pop culture one. So when you're old like me, the records that you liked when you were a kid, they get re-released every 10, 20, 30, 40 years, whatever your mileage is. And they'll remix it, and usually it sounds, okay, maybe just louder. I'm sure they're doing other stuff to it, but to me it just sounds louder because I know what I'm listening to. But they remixed an album called Tim by a band called The Replacements, and it sounds like it was recorded yesterday. It's so good. I can't stop listening to it. So I don't know if anyone, probably no one, is a Replacements fan, but it's so good. And it's important because that only came out a couple months ago, and usually with music stuff, I'm like 2 or 3 years behind. So I feel pretty up on this one, even though it's a 40-year-old record.
Did you stand in line to get it from the
No, I just streamed it. I'm
CD
not that old.
store?
Just streamed it.
I would like to also point out that you are the youngest person on this panel for being so old, Andy.
Yes.
And another positive message from Andy.
There you go.
That's wonderful.
Andy likes something.
Yeah.
Don't always hear that.
I like lots of stuff. It's just kind of more fun to complain.
Fair enough.
My final thought this week is this weekend we are going to do one of my favorite Christmas traditions, with my kids, which is so my father-in-law is a celebrity lookalike for Santa Claus. And so he does like Santa Claus, where you are pretend to be Santa Claus at like a store or something. He does a lot of those type gigs in town. And so this weekend he's doing a tree lighting on Friday, and then he's got a bank appearance. So we're going to go to his
bank appearance.
Yeah, it's like a Lions Club thing, and they give out snacks and face paint and stuff, and then you can see Santa. But the reason I love it so much is that we always have to tell our kids in advance, like, some kids think that the grandpa's real Santa. So they try really hard to like play it cool.
Oh, I was going to ask if they really, really sold it, really went overboard.
It is so funny. So I will try to take some notes or see if I can get any video footage of them just like casually visiting Santa. Just, the real Santa. Never seen this guy before.
Are they saying that out loud when they walk up? They're like, think I'll just check this Santa guy out.
Just
here.
A real hard wink at the camera.
Yeah. The real Santa from how long did it take you to get here from the North Pole? Wink. So lots of that this weekend.
Santa, who's your favorite grandchild? Oh, mind.
Where's Mrs. Claus is what I meant. So I'll let you know how that goes. Jeff, what is your final thought this week?
So I was talking to my daughter last night, the one that still talks to me.
Oh.
And she has to submit for her yearbook what her quote is going to be.
The worst.
Yeah. So she was kind of bouncing around some things, like wasn't taking it very seriously, which is fine. But she did decide on a quote. I said it was from Star Wars. She said it wasn't. But anyway, I'm not going to say what it was because she would prefer I do not do that.
Because she will then not talk to you.
Got to read the yearbook in 10 years to find out.
Do you guys remember, did you have a quote in your yearbook?
We didn't do that.
You did not do that? What about you, Andy?
It's a Pearl Jam lyric.
It's a Pearl Jam. Which one? Jeremy spoke in class today.
No, it is not that one. No. I don't know.
No.
What was yours?
We'll share it off the air. How about that?
I think I had something cheesy like, no one's more important than the team.
Yes.
Jeff.
I think I did something like that.
Boo.
I wasn't there yet.
Yeah.
Alex. No blocking and tackling or thing that leads to the thing or anything like that. So.
No.
You didn't say I'm going to college, the thing that leads to the thing.
Damn, it was right there too. How could I miss that?
Unreal.
My dog, when she was a puppy, chewed up my senior year yearbook.
No.
And my wife was very despondent, like, I'm so sorry. And I could not have been more thrilled. It was so great. I don't need that thing.
Well, if any of our listeners like to share their senior yearbook quotes, that's a free can koozie coming right at you.
Ooh.
So just email those to us.
Hard to turn that down. You should send us those quotes.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, that about wraps it up for today. Thanks, everyone, for joining us today. Please make sure that you like, subscribe to, and share the podcast. When you can, email us with your comments, questions, deep thoughts, quotes, dirty shop pictures, clean shop pictures, anything that you want to email us, you can. Jeff loves getting email, as we know. So
Love it.
He's going to be thrilled
Makes me feel special.
just to see that hit his inbox. That's Jeff, Anna, Andy, or David at IN.com. Email the podcast in the subject line. Please subscribe to our daily and weekly newsletters. You will find the podcast there as soon as it comes out Monday mornings. We want to thank you guys for joining us again. I'm Anna Wells for Andy Zoll and Jeff Ranke and David, wherever you are. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next week.